What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Opening Pair Sport Zone edition number 13. As tonight on this edition, we break down and review the ODI series between the Netherlands and Ireland, which finished 2-1 to the Netherlands. I am joined by my opening batsman, the guy who takes the first ball every single time, Mr. Kyle Gavin. How are you keeping, sir?
Yeah, good. Yeah, looking forward in a way to speaking about this series, and maybe not so much in others. But yeah, episode 13 already. Wow. I'm lucky for us, I suppose, with this result. But yeah, looking forward to getting in.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, I think I just want to kind of let's just kind of get a precursor out of the way. We are fans. We are Irish cricket fans. This isn't kind of us kind of hurling from the ditch, as they say. We want the best for Irish cricket, and unfortunately this didn't turn out the kind of the way that we would have liked as fans. But I do think that there still is a lot of positives that we kind of want to get into. And listen, who better than to join us on screen than a returning favourite, a fan favourite, if you will, from the audience.
Oh, wow, yes.
He is the one, the only one of Mullingar's great spin bowlers, Mr. PJ Mount.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we doing? Looking forward to this now, again, to dissect all that happened, should I say, in that series.
Yeah. No, it's great to have you on board, PJ. I suppose, as Keith has so rightly pointed out, we're all cricket fans here, and it is what's connected the three of us. So there is a lot to get into, but as you say, there's some sort of knowledge amongst us potentially.
I'm sure we can make it up as we go along anyways.
Exactly, yeah.
I think between the three of us, we'll have one solid opinion for the next hour or so. But where do you want to kick us off, Kyle? How do you want to kind of direct this conversation?
So I suppose we'll get the official side of things out of the way. It's the Super League World Cup qualifier and series. It was a 3-match series in Utrecht, as you can see, from the 2nd to the 7th of June. So I suppose in the first ODI we can just run through the teams very quickly and get stuck into what actually took place. But so I'm just looking at the page here. Holland went with Myburgh, O'Dowd, Cooper, the lead, Seelar, Scott Edwards, Zulfikar, Van de Beek, Van der Gugten, Klassen and Glover. Ireland went with the experienced opening pair of Porterfield and Sterling, Balbirnie the captain at 3, Harry Hector at 4, George Dockrell making a return as a batsman at 5, Lachlan Turco with the gloves, and we had Simi Singh at 7, McBride 8, Barry McCarthy at 9, Joss Little 10, and Craig Young at 11. I suppose we'll go to our guest first, Keith, and allow him to dissect that Irish lineup. For you, PJ, was there any major surprises or shocks?
Surprises or shocks? No. But I was disappointed that we went back to Porterfield. I get why we did it. All of our openers in the last year have been pretty poor. I don't think anyone has averaged more than 10 as an opener. I think in the Super Over Series, McCullum's averaged 2, O'Brien's averaged something like 7 as an opener. So, I mean, there isn't a lot of pedigree there, so why not go back to your tried and trusted opener, Porterfield, and kind of hope that he turns back the clock maybe 7 or 8 years? But I was disappointed to see him opening the batting, but with Delaney being out and Camphor being out, I could kind of understand it.
Yeah, it seems fair. Keith, yourself, do you have any points to add to what PJ has said, or?
I think that they're in a kind of an interesting place at the moment in terms of team selection, in my own opinion, in the sense that, we've got this fantastic IP50 competition that's really kind of building and growing. And, they have looked to that as a kind of like you play well in this, you are going to get a gig. And to be fair, yes, Porterfield's not the same guy from 7 years ago or even, 4 years ago in that kind of 2-match series against England. But the guy still scored runs, and if you're picking a squad fairly based on currency, the guy has money in the bank. So I can kind of understand the selection. Yes, it's disappointing, and I think it's one of those things. Sport is so fickle in the sense that if it pays off, then it's a wonderstruck. As for the Dockrell at 5, Camphor was out. Dockrell had been baiting runs and looked a genuine kind of all-rounder. So you can kind of understand him slotting in the 5 spot. Other than that, it was kind of business as usual. And then kind of the extended squad was made up of a couple of guys who I think, while they're probably working fit for purpose now. I can see then in the kind of the next 12, 18 months that they can definitely fit in and make a kind of hopefully a big impact on Irish cricket in an international way.
Yeah, I think you've made both actually have made some excellent points. For me, I was somewhat surprised that Getkitt didn't get into the squad at all, even the extended squad. I think we've seen with when he played with the A side, he was the outstanding player on show, basically, from a batsman's point of view, anyways. For me, yeah, I think the Porterfield thing was a little bit unusual. I do get that, yes, look, he absolutely has money in the bank, and all the same, in fairness to Balbirnie, it is quite an inexperienced batting lineup, aside from obviously himself and Sterling. But I was just ever so slightly surprised at Kevin O'Brien. I know he hasn't been on the best of form, but him and Sterling formed a fantastic partnership in T20, and obviously with the T20 World Cup coming up, hopefully in the not too distant future, I thought maybe they might go that direction. But look, having said that, Gareth Delaney was out injured. Camphor was the same. So yeah, they probably just went with that extra bit of experience, I suppose.
I just wanted to make a point on Porterfield. Now, granted, he did score runs in the IP50 and, has done well in that competition. But he was selected for the Ireland A series that preceded this series, or the Ireland Wolves, shall I say, against the Netherlands A. And he was worked out there by Logan van Beek. And Logan van Beek was going to be part of this Dutch attack. He was going to bowl at Porterfield. So, from that point of view, it seemed a poor selection. A disappointing selection, should I say. Not poor, because that'd be unfair on Porterfield, but disappointing.
It's interesting that you bring up the A's against Netherlands, because I think that series almost kind of set a tone for what to expect almost from Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Like, these guys weren't going to just, roll over, in years gone by. And I think because of how tight that series was, and a lot of those guys, kind of did play and was in and around the squad. So, you can almost, I don't want to say it was like a jumping off point for success, but it definitely kind of helped that a number of those guys came into kind of like the main squad against kind of similar faces.
Well, I suppose happenstance led to that, because a lot of the Dutch players, a lot of their better players, Colin Ackerman, Tentas Kata, Van der Merwe, weren't selected because they weren't released for their counties. And so the Dutch were hamstrung coming into the series as well, so they had to kind of pick from their A squad when 3 of their 4 best batsmen weren't around.
Yeah, it's a huge blow. It's actually something I was looking at earlier on Quick Info. The number of the names and the number of players that the Dutch were missing was just frightening. But yeah, it was also just when you do mention that A series, just before we do get into this first game in a little bit more detail. One thing I found somewhat unusual, and maybe I'm kind of overly thinking with it, but both pitches for 3 games in Utrecht and in Ireland were very, very slow and low, very similar. I thought it was very unusual how it was a struggle for the batsmen. No one really made huge runs. No one hit 100 in any across 6 games. I just thought it was very, very unusual.
PJ, you're the resident bowler here.
Yeah, so yeah. I know. Okay, it does tend to be like that. It does tend to be a bit slow and low. But saying that, I didn't think there was any demons in the Utrecht pitch. I thought it was a pitch that hasn't seen lots of international cricket. I think it was making its debut this series, and most of those new fresh wickets, especially at that level, prepared by a groundsman to kind of reach the ODI status, they do tend to be on the slow side, which is understandable. But I didn't think there was many demons in it. The fact that, as we'll probably discuss, there was very few runs scored in the series.
Yeah, there really was, yeah. So I suppose, look, we'll get into some of the facts and figures from the first game. Obviously, Paul Stirling hit 69 for Ireland. I think Simi Singh was the only other one that looked anyway comfortable on that pitch, with making a 45. There was a couple of contributions from the Dutch batsmen, 23 for O'Dowd, 20 for Myburg. No one really went very big. I think Van der Gugten was the game changer for Holland with 49, just missing out on a first ODI half century. Josh Little, let's talk about Josh Little. 3 for 32 from his 10 overs. PJ, I'm going to come to you first. How much of a golden find has he been for us in the last number of years?
He's been brilliant. It's so exciting to see a guy who is not afraid to go out and bowl a bouncer, not afraid to get up and pitch it up, not afraid to bowl wicket-taking deliveries. And I think from an opening or a first change ODI bowler, he probably should be opening the bowling, but that's neither here nor there. From a guy like that who's doing the job he's doing, it's been fantastic to see. And it's so good that we have someone now that we can kind of say, right, for the next 5 or 6 years, this guy is going to be dependable on us. Or is going to be dependable for us, should I say.
Yeah.
It's really exciting to see just the pace, and he just keeps things simple. It looks like, he's not phased by much. And on that first day, when he ripped through the middle order of the Netherlands with a frightening spell, it was really interesting to see, and it's really positive for Irish cricket going forward.
Yeah, and that left arm option, Keith, it's fantastic, isn't it?
It just makes a huge difference. I tell you, good when I was lucky enough to be at the Ireland under-19s in New Zealand, the World Cup there a few years ago, and Little was part of the squad, and he just looks night and day. I think like he's trimmed down, he looks bigger, he looks stronger, he looks like he's well able to get through a big spell back then. Like he was injury prone a little bit, I think it's fair to say. I think, listen, he was a massive find throughout the series. He's definitely a high contender for my kind of Irish player of the series. It was just, I felt in that first innings, having gotten them 50 odd for 5, it was kind of that same old issue that we seem to have in that kind of like third quarter of a bowling innings, where we just don't have that bit of penetration, and it just seems to be something that we keep kind of coming back to for whatever reason. We just can't seem to take those wickets kind of from about kind of like 26 to 42, and it's killing us, I think. And listen, if we're pointing it out, and again, going back to what we're saying, like, but we're by no means pros at this, or from a pundit point of view, nor as a playing point of view. And, if we know this, I'm sure Graham Ford and the guys know this as well.
Well, you'd like to think that Balbirnie would recognise that Van der Hoeken can bat. Like, he hit 85 for Glamorgan against Yorkshire, the first championship game of the season. Balbirnie was his teammate. And Van Beek hit 50 odd in one of the A games, and a lot of the boys were still playing. These guys could bat. And, like, I'm not sure about you, but I felt we were really passive during that period. And as you mentioned, it has been a problem. But it feels like we just bowl McBride and Singh, and they go at 3.5 and over, and we're like, oh, sure, it's fine, we're keeping it tight. And all of a sudden they go they went from 100 off for 7 to 150 for 7. Or even, if not more, like.
Yeah, it's a good point. It did. It just seemed like the game was just allowing, Balbirnie sort of allowed it to drift. He just seemed happy to keep singles or let them hit the strike. They weren't really hitting boundaries. To me, it just looked like they were playing themselves in to just have a go at the end. And I think that's the issue that we've sort of touched on as well with our batting lineup, is that we don't really have that. Like, obviously with Adair not in the side, I don't agree with that decision. But look, Delaney been out, Camphor as well. He's a rotator, he's a builder, but he's not the guy that can come in and really clear the boundary. It was frustrating to watch, but I suppose you slightly mentioned Simi Singh, and I think he's been quite underrated for a number of years, particularly with the bat. Keith, what's your point of view on Simi?
I've always been a massive Simi Singh fan, personally. I think that he adds a little something that we maybe don't have in that kind of lower to end order. That like he's not. Simi to me seems like a guy who's very, very confident in himself and knows what he's about. And sometimes I think there's a little bit of like, this is the Simi show. And when it comes off, I think it's great. Like for the Lightning, he's done massive stuff in the last 12 months in that. I think that we needed another person in that first game to play like what Simi did. Like we were getting bogged down, and Simi was at least trying things, in kind of in terms of his foot movement and whatnot, looking to get off strike, looking to kind of find different areas to score. And I felt like that's what killed us. But I've always been a massive Simi Singh fan personally. I think he's very underrated with the ball on a good day. But I think it needs to be the right conditions for him with the ball. But no, I think to me, he's a key component of this team moving forward.
Yeah. I think you've hit a lot of points. Like, as you said, on the right day, he is very special with the ball, but he's never a guy that's going to absolutely be smacked around the park. PJ, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just have a hunch, something that's really interesting about Simi Singh. Now, I have nothing to back me up on this, but he seems to bowl really well to right-handers. And for an off-spinner to bowl well to right-handers is very important. I think to end the balance of any ODI side, especially ours, considering we've got McBrien, who is also an off-spinner. So, again, one of them needs to be able to do that. But it's just a hunch that I always feel like he does really well. So he can go as tight to the stumps, cramps them for room, and doesn't let them kind of play sweeps or get on the front foot too much to him. So, yeah, no, I pretty much agree with what Keith says. I think there's that swagger about him that I really like. I can't say I always rated him, but over the last, I think since he hit that big score in Marion in that T20 game about 3 or 4 years ago, kind of opened my eyes to what he could do. And I suppose like he had a really good tournament back in there's a couple of games he did play in the 2019 World Cup qualifier back in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
He did a job at 5 at the back for that tournament. I can remember at times, and did pretty decently there. So.
So obviously, unfortunately, we lost out with the 1 run. Heartbreaking stuff. So that was the first ODI. The second, both sides were unchanged again. The Dutch once again won the toss, decided to set a total for us. And what did they set us? It was 157 all out in the end. It was much more like it from the boys again. Little, and the man we haven't actually mentioned was Craig Young. Keith, he bowled fantastically well.
He did, and listen, we broke down our review of the England series last year, and I made a point in that show that I felt that Craig Young became into his own in that series as the leader of the attack. It didn't go perfect for him in this series, but there was definitely times when he kind of was... At a time when things weren't going always great, I think you'll always get with Craig Young. He'll always put his hand up, and he'll always want responsibility. And I think while it might not always come off, I think you need that in teams. And that second game, he was very, very good. There's no question about that.
Yeah, he was. PJ, what do you think?
He just bowls a really good length for ODI cricket. Like you saw that to Jason Roy in that series that you previously mentioned. That he just bowls this really difficult length to get on the front foot, to get on the back foot. It's always in and around fifth stump. I know it's something that he's changed his game. He's got a bit more pace about him from when he first came onto the scene about 7 or 8 years ago now at this point, if not longer. When he was kind of just a floaty swing bowler. But now, there's a bit more about him, as you said. Definitely, as Duffer said, he's leading the attack now really well.
He just seems the type of guy that, as you say, he has that fight about him. He's just like, over my dead body, I'm not going to be bettered here. I'm going to, you might not get the most amount of wickets with it, but I'm going to fight you to the very end. You have to earn everything you can from me. And just looking at his figures here, 4 for 18. It's just, it's serious going. Like, and
it kind of. I was just going to say that, like, it starts and bookends a beautiful spell by Josh Little as well.
Yeah.
He gets four for as well, man of the match in the second one, and just great to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I know there's so much positives from that innings, but didn't we let the last wicket or the second last wicket? I know as Zuckerberg came back in afterwards, but they went from 110 to 150 odd, and it was the same thing again. It was like we were bowling to Brandon Glover, just kind of allowing him to get at the crease. And I can't remember who else was the other batsman at the time. But again, the two of them batted pretty well to put on 40 runs, whereas we should have bowled them out for 120, 130 and, got the game over in the next 30 overs. But again, we let it linger on too much.
Yeah, I think actually, just now that you say that was actually picked up on comments when I was watching. They were saying, like, they had the two spinners. They had Simi and they had McBrien on him, almost sure. And I think it was Niall O'Brien that said, like, what would a 10 and 11 batsman rather face? Simi Singh, no offense, or Craig Young bowling absolute rockets? And I think, any of us here would much rather be facing spin. At least you're not going to, like, break a finger, break a hand, or whatever. And of course, with Zulfikar being injured with his hamstring, another ridiculous run out. But look, that's neither here nor there. But look, it drifted small, but I suppose we went and we chased, and once again our friend William Porterfield just didn't happen for him, but it didn't seem to affect us too much. PJ, talk us through Paul Sterling.
Oh, isn't he just fantastic? Just the way he just goes at the ball, no matter who's bowling. He is the type of guy do I think I would absolutely hate bowling to, because every ball, he's going to want to score runs off. And it's not just runs, it's boundaries that he wants to score. I know he didn't score many. I think he scored 6 boundaries in the 60-odd, and it was quite a slow pace. But even still, he hits the ball so hard. And it's just his numbers over the last few years have been ridiculous. What's he scored? About doesn't have centuries, 6 centuries in the last 2 years? Something along those lines. At a strike rate of about 90. Just top class for us. And I mean, it's come to the point now, though, where we overly rely on him. If Paul Sterling doesn't score runs, we don't score runs. And suppose in one way, it's great to have someone that we know is going to average 50. But in another way, it must be a lot of pressure on him. And teams, once they get him out, must give them such a boost. However, it didn't seem to affect us in that second game.
No, it didn't. Keith, we actually didn't even mention Sterling. He hit a half century in the first game also. Like we didn't mention him, but he's just. I think as well, like Peter, you actually touched on it quite briefly about how he looks for boundaries and he hits the ball so hard. But I felt in the last maybe year to 18 months, he's battled with a lot more responsibility, or a lot. He doesn't just throw it away. He used to have that bad habit of it almost looked too easy for him. And he got bored in a way, but now he seems to really be like hungry to really cash in.
Did he have a conversation with Bracewell? I think he said on an interview maybe about 18 months ago that he was fed up of averaging 30 and knew that his talent was worth more than that. And he did start to knuckle down without compromising his game, because what is Paul Sterling? Paul Sterling is an aggressive opening batsman who takes advantage of the power play. If he wasn't going to do that, that would be taking a lot away from his game, a lot of his advantages. And I suppose with maturity, you do that. What's he, 30? He's 30 years of age now, in and around that.
He'd be thereabouts.
11 years in international cricket. It was time for him to kick on. And I suppose as a nation, we're very lucky that he has been doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very much a sort of a nation stands to applaud Paul Sterling every single time. But I think from my own perspective, there's 2 ways of looking at it with Sterling, and that the form that he's been in this last year or so, since the Southampton series brought it on against Afghanistan and again here, for me it's almost shades of what Kane Williamson did in the 2019 World Cup for New Zealand. He almost kind of carried them to a final, and you kind of feel something. Sterling is carrying us over the line every single time. And listen, Niall O'Brien is constantly saying at least 3 or 4 times on comms, if it's not Balbo and Sterling, who is it? Someone else got to stand up. I think, Balbo did very well in the second innings to come back from what was quite frankly a very watery dismissal in that first game. 2 boys getting us home. I think that with Sterling, yes, it's great that he's in this kind of like Indian summer of his career and everything is coming off, but there's just such an over reliance on him. And we've all played cricket. Like, one day you feel great and the next day you can't hit it off a square, and what happens then? Like, where do we go from there? And let's hope it's not for a while, but it is something to kind of like think about and kind of like make note of as well.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I actually have. We're going to, at the end, we'll sort of kind of look into the future somewhat, but I have a bit of a left field idea for the other opening spot, but we'll get to that a little bit later. As you say, we got across the line that it seemed like we were much more back to business, I suppose, for want of a better way of describing it. It was like, okay, we've arrived now. The guys have all kicked in. They played good competitive cricket, and now it's starting to pay off. But then we went into, I suppose, we go into the third game. We have to touch on it. As I said, having come off a quite a comfortable win in the second game, we finally won a toss and decided to set. PJ, do you think that fact that we won the toss was that the right decision to bat first, having won previously chasing? Or
look, on a wicket like that, you're never sure about what the best thing to do is. We'd won one chasing, we'd lost one chasing. So I wouldn't be too critical of the decision to bat first, to be honest, on a wicket like that. I would be critical of how we opened. I would be critical of the team we selected. But no, not that decision.
Yeah, as you say, it sort of is one of those ones. It's a toss. You want to lose and allow the other captain to make the decision for you. But yeah, as you say, look, there was one change to the Irish side: Kevin O'Brien coming in for the out of form William Porterfield. Keith, looking at that lineup, exactly the same. Bar O'Brien in for Porterfield. Mark there sitting there with a bib on him, wondering what the hell he's done wrong. What were your thoughts on a very, very important series for our country?
It was, and listen, I think I understand the market error kind of conversation, but at the same time, like the guys that are in there ahead of him, like they do warrant selection. So let's not forget that for a second. Like Barry McCarthy has been a very consistent performer for Ireland for the last kind of 18 months or so. Yes, he is up and downs and these blips, but like all players do, and just at the moment, the selectors clearly feel that he's the guy that should be there. I think, after that kind of the attack kind of picks itself, I've mentioned Young is kind of like the leader in my eyes. Little is kind of firing in there. And then they're deciding to go with these kind of the spin twins, for use of a better term, with Mac Bryan and Singh. Listen, I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If it comes off, you're a hero. If it doesn't come off, well, why did you change? Why did you do these things? I think that the move to replace Porterfield was probably the correct decision. It didn't work out, unfortunately, and that's just the long and the short of it.
Yeah, it definitely just seemed, as you say, you're damned if you don't.
Sorry to cut you off there, Carl, but Barry McCarthy is such an anomaly in my mind, because in his first 25 ODIs he took 45 wickets and then didn't play ODI cricket for about 2 years.
Yeah.
The selectors didn't seem to have anything to do with him. Even during this time, he was taking wickets for the Lightning throughout. I think he took a fiver for Durham and just at the kind of tail end of his first kind of spell in the ODI game. But he's taken twice as many wickets as anyone else has in the IP50 competition. I think he's got 17, MacArthur has 9. Like, it would be ridiculous not to select him.
Yeah.
But I look at the team and I look at what the Netherlands did. And the Netherlands went in with 4 seamers throughout the series because I suppose they know the conditions better. They know the Utrecht pitch because a lot of them still play in the top class in the Netherlands. And I just wondered for that final game, could we have been a little bit braver if we wanted to get Adair in and drop one of the spinners? Maybe drop McBride, because they were both went to 3.5 and over. Both took, I think Simi took 3 wickets and McBride took 4, if I'm right, or the other way around. I think a brave decision would have been to get that 4th seamer in, because it is quite slow. It was up and down bounce. I'm sure we'll talk about the Dockrell dismissal, how I think that was probably the most important ball of the series.
Yeah.
And that would have been a brave decision. Ireland don't make brave decisions, as we consider we went back from Porterfield to O'Brien. I thought opening the baton, we had Stephen Donaghy, who is a bit of a dasher. He seems to average about 20 at a strike rate of 100, but it would be better than scoring 2 off 7, especially on a slow wicket. You might as well go and have a go. And if you're 30 for naught after 5 overs, well then you had 4 over then for the rest of the innings, and you're up to about 210, 220, and that's a winning score on this wicket. I would say 9 times out of 10. So that's what I would have done if I was in charge of selection for that 3rd game.
Absolutely spitting fire, and in a good way, in a great way.
But that also kind of comes back to what I was saying about Simi earlier, was that like he trying to find ways to score rather than kind of getting bogged down. No, like let's keep this moving, lads. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's 50 over. We're not here for 5 days.
Yeah, no, completely. And like I have to admit that you practically jumped into my head there, Peter, because those are some very similar thoughts to what I've had. And I know we've exchanged a lot of long voice notes on WhatsApp, but going back and forth. But
Thank God for double speed, am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I just seen Adair sitting there on the bench, and I just thought to myself, we can't afford to leave that kind of talent sitting, carrying drinks. I'm a massive fan of Barry McCarthy. I think he's been our outstanding bowler over the last 18 months. I think he's been absolutely amazing. But he had quite a poor series. He struggled with injury on and off. I know he did quite well with the Lightning lately, but there was issues, like he didn't play in any of the Wolves games with an injury and stuff. And it just didn't look like he was fully on. And I'm not saying it was performance. It just looked like he wasn't fully there. and I just felt there was an opportunity that, like, these are massive 10 points that we can't afford to give away. And as you say, Balbo, I always would have taken him, especially in the England series, that he was very creative and attacking. But it just seems in the last year or so, he's kind of become a little more safety first in a way. But I just thought the Adair one was just very strange, especially with Camphor not in the squad. The balance that he gives down the order can bowl, excellently. And as you said, PJ, the Dutch went in with the four seamers, and it was pace all the way, and it really did have an effect on our batsmen, especially as you said, that Docker dismissal that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I thought that Docker dismissal, as I said, it was just a ball that just kept low, and both Tector and Docker seem to be doing well. And you get balls to stay low on slow wickets. It happens. When you kind of have to forget about it. Ireland didn't forget about it. Tector, he got one the next over and was playing at one that I don't think he would have played at, or I don't think he would have played that shot if this dismissal hadn't have happened. I thought Lorcan Tucker's shot then was a bit unfortunate. Was it then the LBW? Was it McBrien's LBW to hit the pad, or I'm not sure if I'm getting that, but or Josh Little, sorry, LBW. That was unfortunate as well. And so all of a sudden you've got 4 dismissals based off that one ball. And that completely halts our momentum, and means that we're probably cruising to about 200. Simi Singh ends up 20 not out as we stumble to 163. It was just so unfortunate, and it just shows how much luck can kind of play a part in cricket. That we can sit here and analyze the game in detail, but one small ball that didn't bounce as it was supposed to bounce has probably cost Ireland 10 points in the World Cup Super League.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, as you say, looking at the batting card, our two main guys went reasonably early, and it was left up to Tector and Dockrell. And Keith, you've always been a fan of George Dockrell, and it was fantastic to see the form he's been in rewarded. And as well as that, Harry Tector, he's had a lot of pressure on his shoulders since that under-19 World Cup, and we've seen him with a 30 not out in the second game, and he finally cashed in and got his first half century in ODIs, and I think that's a seminal moment in his career.
Well, it should be, no matter how you can believe all your own hype, and you can believe the dressing room saying, we believe in you, we believe in you, we believe in you. But we've all been there when you're not performing, you're not taking wickets, you're not scoring runs. Should I be here? Am I in the right place? And I'd say there's definitely a mental sort of weight off his shoulders, having hit the 50, having been able to raise the bat. Yes, it's in a losing cause ultimately, but you would hope that this would then be a catalyst for him to move on. The Dockrell one, yes, I've always been a massive fan of Dockrell. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out when everyone is fit again. The likes of Delaney and Camphor, where does Dockrell still fit in? Does he swap back out? But in the moment, it's still good that he's come in and he's scored something. Yes, unfortunately, it's not a match-winning score, but at least it's something. And I think it probably keeps him within the squad moving forward.
Do you not find, though, I think Harry Tector is going to become a good batsman, but do you not find it very frustrating watching him go down the wicket to block a ball and try and get one, rather than use that risk to actually go and hit out? I know Scott Irvine put on his Twitter there, he was talking about his interception points. I think they mentioned it in the game as well. But it was just to score once. Whereas, if you're going to be an ODI number 4, you need to be able to impose yourself and score boundaries. I know he's only a young man; he's still learning his trade at the top level, and it must be, as you said, really hard to have that and then still be questioning yourself. What am I doing here? I'm sure he probably has those feelings, and I'm sure, as I said, we all have. But still impose yourself. I'm sure when he's in the nets, he plays all the shots. He will go down the wicket, and rather than just try and knock one to point or to cover, he's going to open the arms up and hit it through extra or through cover. That 4 he hit, we're probably still all remember it. Noel O'Brien was talking about it 30 overs later. So he can do it. I just would love to see him do that more in this side.
I think that what you're saying right there, though, it's probably a discussion in itself, in that think back the last kind of 5 or 6 years, other than Sterling, who does that? Who imposes themselves when they go out to bat? Who really kind of strides in with this kind of confidence and swagger and kind of tips ball left, right and centre, does the things you're saying, really takes on bowlers? we don't have that, or if we do have it, there's guys playing within themselves that aren't doing it. So I think it's part of a wider discussion almost that could take another hour to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It just with the detector thing is that he's been touted for so long that I think it seems like he's been around longer than he has. You know, we forget he's 20 years of age. He's extremely, extremely young, and I think we both said like the future is very, very bright for him. But like, I suppose the fact that Ireland now Test status and that likes of those sort of things, he would have been shipped off to a county side somewhere, you know, like the likes of that Balbo and Sterling and those guys learn their trade there, and it's definitely like I know he's moved up north now and he's captaining up there, and fair play to him, he got away from the Leinster line. He could have sat there easily and just tipped along, but you know it's so difficult because we've lost so many older players in a big lump. And all of a sudden, like, you are the man now. You're batting number 4, which is in ODI cricket is a huge role. But yeah, I do get your point, PJ, in that like you can see that he can do it, and it's almost like as if he's like, "Oh, geez, if I get out doing this now, I'm going to absolutely be slaughtered for it." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I go on. Sorry, Duffer.
I wonder though, is this 50 going to be the watershed moment that allows for this kind of the door to open and all the flicks and tricks and skills come out?
I don't know. Maybe now, and Peter, I'm going to allow you to respond to this, but like looking at from the limited bits and pieces that I have seen of him, I don't think he's that type of a player. Like, to me, when we talk about someone who's going to be in the middle order and has those tricks and flicks and everything, that seems more like to me that Lorcan Tucker. From what I've seen of him, just he looks very wristy and he uses his feet very well and he looks positive, but hasn't come off. And I'll come back to him in a while because I have something with that. But I just think Tector is just a very pure player, and it just looks very unnatural for him to try that game of, you know, flicking it and ramping and sweeps. So it just looks very unnatural. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but
if that's the type of player that Tector is, we've got a 3, 4, 5, 6 potentially who are all just like, you know, these technically classical batsmen who, you know, will flounder along in a strike rate of 60, and we'll eventually get to 200. You know, when we're looking across the pond in England, we always compare ourselves, and, you know, Roy and Bairstow are getting that in 22 overs. You know, and this is where we're at. Like, we didn't hit 6 this series. That should be a red flag for us. That we need to, you know, do something. Something needs to kind of change in how we approach the game. And whether that is telling Harry Tector or Balbirnie or Dockrell, you know, go on, try and have a go. We won't care too much if you get out. And allowing them to express themselves. And, you know, if it doesn't work, sure, we end up back to where we are now, you know, still losing to the Netherlands. I mean, we are probably the 13th best team in this World Cup Cricket Super League at the moment. So why not try and do something a bit different in the way we approach the game?
Yeah, it is worrying that fear of relegation it's very, very it's very close. Like it's looking like as if we are going to be in that position. But I just, as I said earlier, the non-selection of Shane Getke just all the more baffles me. That he just looked, when he went in there against their A side, he was that guy that, like Van de Gupton, just when he said, "I don't care, I'm going after this," had that kind of stride of you know, I know I'm good enough, I know I'm big enough, I'm going to hit you further than you can bowl like a good length ball to me. Like, but Keith, do you see us bridging that gap potentially in the next however many years, as we do in England?
The only thing I would say on the Getke thing is that you could argue that what Getke did in that Wolves series, Dockrell was doing that in the IP50, and they're kind of coming in at that kind of 5 spots. Maybe they sort of said, we'll go with George on that. So that would be my only kind of reply to that in terms of like bridging the gap. Like when
I say bridging the gap, I don't mean obviously we're going to struggle to bridge the gap. I mean, as in bridging the gap in style of cricket, as in attacking cricket.
Well, you see, I think that, and again, harping back to the review that we did last year for the England series, is that like Balbirnie had kind of set up in this way, and that like we'll keep going at you, and I don't know. Something's obviously kind of changed, or there's been a sort of a discussion about stylings of cricket. I think when you're going to play in England, there's probably how can I put this? You probably trust what you're going to get in terms of a pitch point of view. So you're better equipped to know from your attack what you're going to get and what you can get out of the pitch. Whereas they've gone to England, they've had the 3 games there, then they've faced Afghanistan, UAE, and whatnot, and maybe they just were kind of like him and Han in terms of like, well, what is maybe the best makeup of this team? And then that's kind of confusion has maybe kind of rolled into this. And then guys missing and whatnot that would be classed as first teamers. But I think that there is still a lot of talent in Irish cricket. And, we've rattled off a lot of good names there that can still like perform at a very, very top level. So like, yes, it's not great that we lost to the Netherlands 2-1, but like, I still think that there's a lot of cricket still left to play, and all it takes in any sort of sport is a couple of wins, and everyone's back on top, baby. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just look at Stefan Myberg. He was, in the doldrums in the second, coming up into the third game. People were questioning, was this going to be his last ODI? Yeah. And he gets a leg stump half volley first ball, hits it for 6, and all of a sudden scores 70 on that out. And exactly as Duffers just said, I don't see him being dropped for their next series. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange game. It really is. And I suppose, look, we have a big summer coming up, and like Zimbabwe are coming, South Africa are coming. It's not getting any easier. But I suppose some of the issues that we have, not issues, but I suppose just the problems that we have are probably that other opening position beside Sterling and. So this is the one I've been waiting for the whole evening, and I know now people are going to be like, "What's he talking about?" But Lorcan Tucker, we've not really spoke about him too much tonight, and I think, look, he for me, he seems lost down the order. That he doesn't know what he is. He doesn't know if he's there to guide home the tail because we're 70 for 5 or whatever it is, or 105 for 5, or so he doesn't know how to play that role of attack, or see it off, or what's it. And I just feel that if we just say to him, look, you're keeping, so you're judging the bounce, you're in the game all the time, you're getting yourself in technically, go out and open with Sterling. We know what Paul can do, we know what Andy can do. You're there to do those ramp shots, trick shots, whatever it is. You see it in him. He uses his feet excellently well. I just think, to me, he seems the type of guy that needs to be given an exact role and said, look, this is what we want from you. Go and do it. You have the license to do it. And I know we've spoken on about hitting the ball far and everything else, but I think it's just as important to be able to manipulate the field, especially when your paws are on the other end. Keith, am I crazy?
I mean, like, it's an option. Is it the option? In my opinion, no. I don't think it's a role that he's done for Pembroke, so I think I could be just happy to be correct on that one. But I think it's a lot to ask of the lad still, because he's another one to kind of find his feet. And again, much in the same way as that the Harry Tactor thing of like, is he kind of maybe half kind of like doubting himself because he hasn't had a big score yet in international cricket, but he's been a very, very tidy glovesman. And I think he is going to be like the future wicketkeeper for the next 5-6 years, no question about that. Personally, and I would go left field again to another way, but I would be packing this team with as many Tectors as possible, and I'd give Jack a rattle at the opening spot. Personally, I think that there was, in this year's kind of IP50, there was a couple of glimpses of him where he was more willing to take on ball, and I think that's what we're looking for, is that kind of signal of intent. I think if Stephen Donny is a good season with Marion, that kind of definitely puts him up the ranking of this. But it all comes down ultimately to the conversation that we're not privy to of what style of cricket do we want to play? Do we want to be a grind-out team, or do we want to play this play a more fearless brand of cricket? And if that ends up with us being bowled out a couple of times for 107, then so be it. We'll give it a rattle like what we always do. I think if we can be clear in terms of like how we want to play, the personnel will fit in accordingly afterwards.
Yeah, I think it always boils down to, in an ODI team, you want to pick your 6 best batsmen and your 5 best bowlers. And you just wonder, do we know who our best 6 batsmen are? Probably not, so therefore we have to go down the route of picking players that suit our style. I don't think Jack Tector's a bad option. I'm not sure I'd go with Tucker at opening. Sorry, simply because of how well he plays spin. I mean, if you remember back to that Afghanistan series, where he seemed to play Rashid Khan pretty comfortably, and I mean, any person who plays Rashid Khan pretty comfortably probably deserves to be back in that middle order in terms of facing spin and rotating the spin and sweeping and getting funky, as I'd like to say, against the spinner. So look, if Jack Decter has a good season with YM and with the Lightning continues on, does well, this Friday at the T20 and then next weekend as well, there could be an option there for the ODI team. I mean, your ODI opener could be basically a T20 opener as well, because you want them to take advantage early on. I think, regardless if you do want to kind of go and say, right, we want to try and go at 8 and over, or if you want to say, right, we're going to go hard at the top and then let our stroke players in the middle order accumulate to get us to a decent total. You still need, I think, two openers who are going to go hard at it, in my opinion. So this weekend will be interesting to see who does well at the T20 festival.
And just when you are saying that, and the one name that does pop to mind, and I know PJ, we've spoken about him before. But where does Gareth Delaney stand in all of this? Like, surely he's another one that's, he's been given a bit of a role there. Hasn't come off yet, but PJ, what do you think about him?
See, Gareth Delaney has an unusual technique, and I'm sure he's probably sick to death of people silly people like me talking about his technique. I know Rob Key had an absolute go at him during the ODI series about his technique. And currently in international cricket, there are a lot of people who've got strange techniques. However, none of them have their hands really as high as he does. Now, I wonder, over time, will that get worked out? That would be my only thing, and that he becomes a bit of a walking wicket because people will just know what to do with all the cameras and footage that people have of players nowadays. To me, it looks like if you go full enough to him, he might be a bit loose. Saying that, Gareth Delaney has also poked me around the park before, and I still have nightmares about that. So who am I to criticise his batting? I had to get that in there because we've spoken it before, and I just had to get that in. But it's okay. So that's kind of our batting options. In terms of bowling, it seems that we had a very strong series all in. Peter Chase has done quite well, Keith, for the Lightning. And where do we see him having a role to play later in the summer, or anybody else for that fact? Is there someone maybe left field, I suppose, that are going to come in and push on?
I think pace-wise we're okay, all in all. I think Adair's your first man if that needs the three guys goes down. I would be curious to see if Ben White gets a gig at some stage. He's a guy who got a couple of wickets in the Wolves series. Listen, he's moved from Phoenix up north to kind of get more into provincial cricket into him, and was brought in then kind of at the last minute for the Netherlands series. So I wouldn't be surprised. Well, not surprised. I would like to see him have a go ahead of maybe about a McBride, because we know what Andy's going to do, and a day's going to come when Andy's not going to be there. So let's give White a turn and see what the kid's got.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. PG, you're the resident spinner here. What's your thoughts on Ben White?
I remember reading the Oran Flynn's review of the series on Cricket Europe, and he made a good point that we don't have a specialist spin coach. And yet, I keep on hearing of all these young leg spinners that we have. We've got White, we've got Gareth, we've got what's the young fella at YM who's bowling leg spin? Can't think of his name.
Mitchell Thompson, is it?
There we are. Yeah. So there's three young leg spinners. We also have McBride, who isn't really that old in terms of spinners. Sir Jeetan Patel is still giving it a whirl at Warwickshire, or maybe he did up until last year, but he was still bowling at 40. Garrett Batty was playing in the T20 game I was watching this evening. So, spinners have a long career, and they could do with all this extra, suppose, assistance, for want of a better phrase. But yet we don't have a spin bowling coach, and that was a really interesting point I thought he made. So regardless of all these leg spinners, if we're going to bring them in, they're not going to get better if they're just playing, into provincial cricket. If they're moving from Phoenix up north or wherever Ben White is now playing, let's create a pathway that gets the most out of these young men. So they do push on. So we do have a mystery leg spinner. in 12 months' time that can compete with the likes of, Rashid and Khan and all the other leg spinners who are operating at the moment. Hayden Walsh Jr. is another one that comes to mind. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ben White play. I also like Graham MacArthur. I thought he did really good in the series, and he's been doing okay for the last little while since he's come back from Gloucester. I think he's really kind of pushed on and got that maturity from having that experience over there, and he's come back and has looked a tidy bowler. So, but as I think you both mentioned, our bowling attack is pretty good. It's as good as Zimbabwe's and the Netherlands and Scotland and like that at the moment. So that's okay.
We're in strong company, I suppose. Like that's the you mentioned a lot of names there, and I'm going to bring up one name again, and this is my thing. I always bring up the abstract name that I think all of us have really wanted to see do well, and I actually myself am one of the guys were lucky enough to see him last year up in Terranure break a stump. But Keith, you know where I'm going with this. Like pace, anyone that can bowl 90 miles an hour plus is goalless, and David Delaney has that for it. But it just seems like, for one reason or another, he's never kicked on, or not. I don't even know if kicked on is the right way of describing it, but he's never just had that run of games for whatever reason. You'd think we could get we could get the guy into the side, or just get him on. We need him. Like, we really need that pace.
I mean, it comes down to what I was saying. It's about these conversations we're not privy to in terms of, like, how do we want to play cricket? And if Delaney's name isn't in that grouping when they're on their whiteboards, then that's just unfortunately, that's life. That's international sport. It's just the facts. I do agree with you.
Former captain.
On-field captain. I think that, listen, he's a talent, and we do have a lot of these talents, but at the same time, much to kind of PJ's point about the pathways, like, it has to be like a pathway in terms of, like, where we want to go and where we want to play cricket. And if his name is part of it and needs to be part of it, then it will be, and his time will come. And if not, then it won't.
I have a sneaky suspicion that he's being wrapped up in cotton wool for the T20 World Cup. That's just my thinking on it, because I think he'll be really dangerous in India, and really dangerous, especially in Australia in 2022 now. Oh gosh. So for the next two World Cups, the T20 World Cups, I think that's what he needs to be kept for. So I wouldn't be looking at him in the Zimbabwe or South Africa ODI series is coming up in the summer.
Yeah, he's an absolute. He's an X factor. He just is, and I think even just you look at England as well. Even just when we did mention them, they have Mark Wood and Jofra Archer, and aside from that, even they are wrapping up those guys, as you say, PJ and cotton wool. But I suppose we've done a good wrap up of a disappointing series overall. Just before we do finish, I suppose just to kind of put a capstone on things, like, and Keith, I'll come to you first. Like, what are your expectations, I suppose, for the summer ahead? Are you worried? Are you confident? Or how are you feeling?
No, I think, listen, it's like you can come off these kind of series losses and you can feel very negative and down and things are going bad. But I think there still is an awful lot to kind of look at. Josh Little, massive wickets. Craig Young, really good. The spin twins, I like to call them, they were quite solid in their own way. Balbo got runs. Tector's hit his first 50. Sterling is Sterling. Yes, there's a few other issues in terms of, like, pacing, in terms of how we're batting. But I think any team can have that on any day. And I think that, listen, if we can get some sort of Blarney army into Malahide this summer at some stage, it'll give the lads a lift as well. And listen, do I think we're going to take South Africa at home? No, but if we can clip one of the games somehow, great. If we can clip Zimbabwe, all the better. But, like, I don't think we are there, but I don't think we're too far off the kind of the lower, higher tier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, and at the same time, we're still quite a young nation when it comes to cricket. I hate to allude back to the Netherlands, but I'm going to again. In their top class, they've got lads who have played at 3 or 4 World Cups, taking part still. Whereas we are still in our first generation of cricketers. And that first generation that has retired, and they haven't really got back into club cricket, like in the same way that the Dutch lads have. So these lads are still kind of that first, second kind of crop who are kind of been full-time cricketers and have kind of got that experience and are going back into the club game and improving that. So, look, as disappointing as it is as a fan, we can kind of understand that, we probably don't have the biggest player pool. We don't have probably the greatest system. There's obviously the politics of having 3 unions, which does dilute the talent at the top of the game, which means, in our club, we've got 4 really decent divisions of club cricket, whereas, the players aren't playing against each other aside from interprovincial games. And like, these things are not going to be changed overnight. It's going to take, 5 years, 10 years before, the work that has been done behind the scenes to make us a full member nation, to kind of hang on the coattails of that golden generation and to bring us forward. It's going to take time. And time is what we have with this young team. So, look, I'm not too optimistic about any of the 6 games during the summer. If we get 1 win against Zimbabwe, I would be pleased. I don't see us laying a glove on South Africa. I think high pace is what we struggled against, and left arm leg spin in Shamsi.
Yeah.
I know Maharaj is there as well. We haven't got a great record against left arm spin. Peter Sealer bowled pretty well for a guy who doesn't really bowl anymore. So I can't say I'm optimistic, but yeah, if you get 1 win against Zimbabwe, hey, it's 10 points.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, and both of you have made some very, very interesting points as well. As I think for me, obviously, look, we're a level below that top bracket, but I think the strides that have been made in domestic with the IP50s and the T20 festivals coming up, it's we're seeing shoots of progress at long last. And as you say, PJ, it's a long road, but we do have time on our side, and we're starting to see the last of that golden generation. I think obviously Kev and Porterfield have been absolutely unbelievable servants. Just blessed to have them, and they're finally kind of just not there anymore. But there are guys coming through. Look, they are underdeveloped in terms of top level cricket and stuff like that. But the raw talent is there. I'm not so sure. I think Zimbabwe could be interesting. I think we could pull off a series win there. I just have a sneaking suspicion. South Africa, you don't know with South Africa. I'm not saying we'll turn them over, but they're not exactly at their high water mark either. They've had a lot of stuff going on in the background with board level and what have you. But look,
so Zimbabwe, to be fair.
Yeah, so like, if you get conditions to go our way and, maybe sneak a game here or there. But look, it's great that we actually have something to look forward to this summer. Young prospects coming through, and look, let's see what happens. But Keith, do you want to do the honors with our socials and all of that other stuff?
Yeah, so first off, PJ, thank you so much again, as always, for giving up your time to come on. We really do appreciate your knowledge and your point of view. So thank you so much. As always, to everybody, please do like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment on your thoughts of the series. I am at Keekle of Media on Twitter and Instagram. Kyle is available at Kyle Gavin 23. PJ, I believe you are anonymous on social media these days. From what I can see. So you will catch PJ Mount back here probably in 3 months' time again, talking about another thing, cricket. And I just want to thank everybody, as always, for your support for this channel as we continue to grow out. And we will see you on the next show.
Take care.